You have to understand in Hatha Yoga, so all of you are teaching Hatha Yoga. Everything else is just a style or a brand of Hatha Yoga. Iyengar Yoga is Hatha Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga is Hatha Yoga. In Bikram, what does Ha and Ta mean? What do those two terms mean? Sun and moon. So often we get this, that it's sun and moon, right? But actually sun and moon is SURYA and CHANDRA, right? They're the terms of sun and moon. Ha and Ta is energies of the sun and energies of the moon. So how that shows up in the physical body is if you have too much Ha, too much sun energy, that shows up as a tight muscle. If you have too much Tha and a muscle switched off, that's too much, and the muscle goes kind of slack, that's too much Tha energy. So to deal with too much Ha, you've got to bring more moon, more yin, more Tha practice. For muscles that are switched off, you need to bring more Ha. You've got to bring more energy of sun, more active. So we're trying to balance up through the whole body, Ha and Ta, so that you bring those two together and you're just like one energetic continuum as a physical body. Every asana is a shape or a template to open different lines of energy in the body. So the yogis say we have 72,000 lines, right? Nadis, meridians. And all of those lines are feeding different parts of the body that all have a different role or function to play. All of those lines need to be open so the electricity, the prana, can move through them. If we start to resist life, if we start to close our heart like this, or we start to close down on our feeling states like this, or we lock down on our large intestine like this, then over time, that stops energy moving along certain pathways. So energy goes through the same pathways that we allow it to go down, and we start resisting certain ways of expressing ourselves in the world. Now over time, the electricity can't go down that pathway. The electricity can't go to the pathway, it can't get to the cells. The cells are programmed with information, a function to do. If the electricity is not getting to them, they can't switch on, so that function can't happen. So what we do is, what happens is the body, it starts to break down, it starts to deteriorate, it starts to become inefficient, it doesn't work properly, and eventually, worst case scenario, with no energy, the cells start consuming themselves, and that's cancer. So what think about it as you're doing each template. When you look at a body, you're trying to do all these shapes so that you can get the energy lines back to the parts of the body where it has resisted it, either switched off or turned on, so the electricity can get to the cells, so the information in the cells can do their thing, and we can be balanced. Does that make sense? Yes? Do the anatomy and physiology, it's fine as on top, but understand when you're looking at a body, and a body's like all these things, how are we going to reshape that so that person can show up in a bigger way? Right? So we can show up with more potency, more love and compassion, more wisdom mind. And how do we eventually show up so that all those things are happening at the same time? We show up in the world with power and potency, combined with love and compassion, combined with wisdom. This is when we close the gap, that's how we show up in the world. So as teachers, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to align these outer three layers, eventually so that we can diffuse the barrier, so that we can start to tap in to the intelligence. Again, it will come through to you as insight, inspiration, intuition. And then it's a matter of surrendering to that and finding a way to communicate it out into the world. So in the process, how I work, I call it the 7 steps of living to shine. So we want to bridge that gap from who you are now to who you want to be. And as you do that, it's a simple process of removing the obstacles. We're not adding anything. So we remove the obstacles in the external world. We remove the obstacles in the body. We remove the obstacles in your energy system. We remove the obstacles in the mind and emotion. Then you start to tap into your unique gifts and talents. Then you take them out into the world and be of service. That's the process of yoga. So we're zeroing in from the gap, coming back. So where those 2 points come together, ultimately at the self. But to live this better version of yourself, we all want it, 100%. You need to just remove the obstacles that are in the way, the causes that are in the way. And it will show up as a tight muscle. It will show up as a contracted diaphragm. It will show up as an immobilized joint. It will show up as a muscle that's switched off. It will show up as a nervous system full of impurities. It will show up as a nervous system that's imbalanced. It will show up as a disturbed breathing pattern. It will just show up as held back expression, whether movement or voiced. And it will be all held in place by a belief pattern, by an attitude that justifies the whole thing. So we're learning to reverse engineer, start from the outside and remove all the obstacles. So this outer circle can start to come into alignment, move in one direction, so we can step into our greater intelligence. The way that this shows up, to finish up before a break, is that if we look at the 8 limbs of yoga, the yama and the niyama are very important as well. So as teachers, we often leave this out, but it's the foundations. So the yama is how you relate into the external world. And this is all about deprogramming, because a lot of these things are built into us, like the violence, the not telling the truth, attachments to things, not using our energy wisely, stealing in the sense of like we take on other people's ideas, we take on other people's ways of doing things. All this stuff's built in, so we want to deprogram that so that we start to bring in those principles of having integrity, being truthful, compassion and kindness, non-attachment, not taking other people's stuff or stealing their ideas, or even if someone's having a wonderful time and then you're a downer on that, that's kind of stealing their experience. Using your energy wisely. We all have habits where we don't use our energy wisely. Once we start to expand, it's uncomfortable. If you sit in expansion and you squeeze on it, it feels like charge. That's uncomfortable, then we start to get rid of it. It could be over-exercise, it could be over-sex, it could be junk food, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be arguments, it could be whatever. But we all use different ways to bring ourselves back into a comfortable amount of energy that we can tolerate. Well, guess what? We're going to ask you to step up your energy system more and more and more and more. And you want to step it up. And there's 3 things that are really important to do that. You need the right practices, you need the right teachers, and you need good company. We call this Sangha. Because as you start to set aside the self-limiting beliefs through meditation, you open into new possibilities. And to be able to step into that with authority, you need people around you that like you showing up with more heart, that like you showing up with more potency, that like you having a crack, that you want to step up into the world, that like the ideas. It's very important.